back to the River Volta Podcast. I'm Aliza Prodaniuk, joined today by co-host Ian Canon and our guest, Theressa Slind. Theressa Slind is a librarian and writer, and her fiction has appeared in Prairie Fire, the Malahat Review, the New Quarterly, Grain, and elsewhere. Only If We're Caught, which has just been released and published by Thistledown Press, is her first book. Theressa grew up on a grain farm in Treaty 4 territory in East Central Saskatchewan and attended the University of Saskatchewan and McGill University. She works as a librarian at Saskatoon Public Library and lives in Saskatoon with her family in the blue house with the yellow door. So thank you for joining us today, Theressa. It's great to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
It must feel pretty surreal to finally have that first book in your hands and out for the public.
It really does. Yes, absolutely. It's such a beautiful book. Look at it, so pretty. I was so pleased. Yes.
That's good. Sorry, go ahead, Ian. When was the official release date?
It was September 30th, but the book didn't arrive in bookstores for a few days, or weeks. So I don't know what to say. September 30th, I guess.
Yeah. So very recent, very new out there. That's really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
How much input did you have on the cover?
None at all. Luckily, I just love it so much. Like I was just thrilled with it. It's just beautiful. So I don't know, the designer, her name is Natalie Olson from
Nice.
Kiss Cut Design. You can look her up. She has designed lots of books and they're all just gorgeous.
I remember my process, and it was very long and hard.
Oh yeah.
I'm just not a designer, but I have like an idea of what I wanted it to look like, but I just couldn't like verbalize what that was. I could just say no.
So it would go back and forth, and you said no several times?
Yeah, because I just self-published my first novel, so it was just like a process of. I worked for a marketing agency. Mm-hmm. We had lots of designers, so I just hired one of them.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes some sense because you're familiar with the people too, and you have total control over it. So yeah,
that's right. But it was hard with no design experience. So I almost envy you didn't have any control.
Yeah. She read the stories though, and so she got the image of the jackrabbit from one of the stories called Crypsis, and so it felt to me like she put a lot of thought into it. I was quite impressed.
What was the general experience like working with Thistledown, or just publishing in general, if you want to talk about that?
My experience is super limited, so to me it seemed really great. Liz Phillips is the new editor there, and I knew Liz because she lives in Saskatoon as well, and she was a writer in residence at the Saskatoon Public Library for a while, so she knew who I was. She knew, I think, she knows the mentor I worked with the Saskatchewan Writers Guild, Sylvia Legree, and so I think Liz knew that I had a manuscript that was ready to go. So Liz sent me an email saying, "Hey, do you want to send it over?" She read it, and the editorial board team read it as well. Anyway, it was accepted. So that was in November, like a year ago about now. And I think that's pretty fast compared to lots of publishing processes. So I don't know, I couldn't be more pleased. And then they hired an editor to work with. His name is Michael Kenyon, and he was just such a good person to work with. He's really, really smart. He just did in the summer, he did a workshop a presentation for the Saskatchewan Writers Guild, and it might still be up on their website if you want to take a look. He has some really excellent advice on editing, and I learned a lot from him. And then
how close was it?
What's that?
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask, how close was it? Like when you because you said it got accepted, but what kind of from that during that year, what was the editing process like, or if it existed at all?
Yeah, no, let's see. So we started editing in, I think we had a 2-month deadline to get it in the final product, and we met that quite happily. We worked really well together. So some of the stories a few of the stories we edited or quite significantly. Others was just maybe a tense change or some wording stuff. Getting rid of, he showed me that I used names too frequently, for example, like instead of pronouns, when, you know, pronouns would just get you closer to the character. So he kind of broke me of that bad habit. So some of the edits were super tiny and some were more substantial.
Sorry,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think that's a really interesting habit to have, because I feel like a lot of writers and people's work that I have like looked at in the kind of draft stage, they tend to have the opposite kind of habit, like not using the character's name enough. And a comment that I always often see is, oh, make sure to use a name, or who is this character, who's talking, who's being referred to. So that's interesting to meet somebody that has kind of the opposite experience. Yeah,
and it could be, that could point to other problems too, I suppose, if maybe you should be able to tell who's speaking and whatnot. So anyway, I don't know.
I know it's a common problem that I had when I seen other newer writers that do it in dialogue. You know, you see they like to put it at the end. Like, I don't know why it is, because it's not a natural thing that people do when they're talking, but it seems to be very common.
Oh yeah, in dialogue, I know it can be very awkward in dialogue, and yet you don't want to use all those attributions. So it's just one of those picky little craft things that you have to read over to correct, you know. But yeah, it's a pain to get it right.
Did they change the or help you out with the order?
Yes. I seriously didn't have a sense of, I didn't know how to do it. I submitted it. My rationale was just variety. So variety of point of view. There are some stories in the collection that are just realistic fiction and some that are more speculative. And so I mixed those up. So I didn't think much about flow. It was just variety. And so he helped with that flow. So he looked really carefully at endings of stories and beginnings, just how they run into one another. And I think he proposed an order and I suggested one change to it. And then that was it. So honestly, I will have to work on that. If there's another collection of stories down the road, it doesn't come too naturally to me. My father-in-law, interestingly, is a musician, and he compared it to organizing an album of songs. And I'm like, yes, of course, I had never thought of it that way before, but I think I'll think of it that way next time.
Did you get like more practical advice? Because you said like he looked at the beginnings and endings, but what was he looking at regarding the beginning and endings? Because I'm working on my collection right now, and that's something I'm stuck on. And it's like, do you put stuff that are similar, or do you separate similar stuff to have variety?
I think he looked at tone as well. So he's also a poet, and I am not. So he had a better sense of that, the rhythm of it. So maybe reading out loud, like read the last paragraph and the first paragraph out loud, one after the other, and see how it goes. I think personally, I don't think it's a good idea to have stories that are too similar or seemingly similar. They're not necessarily similar, but they seem similar based on style and point of view. Like he had two workplace stories, like set in workplaces with male and female characters, and it just it was bad together. It was just too monotonous. The stories are completely different, but it just felt it felt bad. So I think it might be a bit intuitive, Ian, I think you should think of the poetry of it, like, so read it out loud, see what the rhythm feels like, and then read for tone. Ugh. Anyway, that's all I can, you might have to read up on it.
Yeah, Aliza, do you have any intuitive answers? How would you structure a short story collection?
I have no idea. Definitely not. I agree with Theresa. I imagine it would be intuitive. Like you would kind of have a sense of how the stories are gonna fit together in a way. But I don't know. It also is always probably interesting to hear other people's perspectives on how they see your stories fitting together. But yeah. I really don't know.
Yeah, it's nice having a reader. Like no one has read them closer than Michael did. And so he's an expert reader and writer. And so I just trusted his instincts on that one. And he was right. And I described the collection in the editing from going from a wrinkled sheet to a nice ironed sheet. That's how I thought about it.
Well, let me ask you this: where is, and so I don't know if the story you're going to read today is, in your opinion, the strongest one, but where is the strongest story in your opinion in the collection? Do you put it at the beginning, middle, or end?
I think you should have a super strong one at the beginning. Yeah. You want people to keep reading, just like in a novel. You don't want to have your some flabby description that goes on for, right, Aliza? Action, right? You're a mystery writer and reader. You want to get right into the action, even if it's a literary novel. You need to capture the reader's interest in some way, open up some questions, get them to keep reading. So with a short story collection, it would be, yes, I think you should start with a strong story. Back to the order, Ian, thematically too, think about that. If you have, in my collection, there's a care home comes up. The same care home occurs in a few stories. And so it starts in a care home and it ends in a care home. So you could think about practical things like that, like setting as well.
Yeah, I've been thinking lately about tying everything together with like a little through line, but that also might be, I don't know if you thought about this because you added like a care home that is, but then it seems like too like it's like a gimmick that's going to change the stories too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I was conscious of being too gimmicky. They're like super lightly connected, but only through things like the name, like the care home is the same.
Yeah.
A central character is an aide in the first story, but she's a central character in a story halfway through the collection. So I mean, the links are extremely light and maybe even imperceptible to most readers, because I didn't want it to be too gimmicky or heavy-handed, or change the sense of the stories either.
Yeah, that's what I was feeling by saying, like by adding something that like a through line, you change the sense of stories in order to like make some connection, but then you kind of hurt the story itself.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful.
Yeah. What was that like? Thinking of that, you know, because you added a care home to more than one. What was the process like? Did these grow individually, or did you write them all at once, or like did you kind of collect them over time?
Collected them over time and wrote them over time. Both stories were set in care homes, but I had originally envisioned different kinds of spaces. One was quite ramshackle and the other one was quite chic, or like a nice care home. Anyway, I made them the same care home in the end. So I didn't have to change too much of the sense of the stories in that regard. Yes, and wrote them over time. You know, it's hard writing short stories. You probably know. Have you taken a short story writing class yet, or?
I have. I think we both, Aliza and I, have taken the same one with Guy Vanderheg.
Yeah, I took that one a few years ago too. I was lucky to be able to do it, but anyway, and then working full time. So I'm not a fast writer, first of all. I'm busy. I have a full-time job and a family and stuff, so I'm very, very slow. So short stories suit my style. And yes, I wrote over several years and kind of learned how to do it over several years.
What do you think is the difference? Because I don't know if you have tried writing a novel, but what do you think is the difference between them, even in writing or just in like spirit, like in the feeling of the two?
Yeah, you have so much more room to luxuriate in character and plot and things like that. Novels, of course, are way more expansive, so you can have way more characters, you can have many more problems. I just read Jonathan Franzen's new one called Crossroads. Yeah. And he employs many points of view, and I love when a novel successfully does that. But short stories are tricky that way. You can't do that very easily or get away with it. I think really good short story writers can, but that's not me. So, I mean, I'm awesome. You should buy my book. But
as writers, I think we're all a little self-deprecating sometimes. So.
Well, just some writers are so expert and they can do anything and break every rule they like, right? So I'm not at that point yet.
That is one thing I've enjoyed writing short stories over the last year, is that I find that you can be a lot more experimental or get away with the experiment, maybe not in POV, but in other ways, like you can be a lot more, like you can have a bit more fun, I think. Whereas when I'm thinking of a novel, it's a long journey a reader's gonna go on you with. So if you're experimenting too much, they're gonna get a little bored of the experiment.
That's true. You can be a bit silly. Like one of the stories in particular is it's pretty light and it's just funny. That's it. There's not much more to it than that, in my opinion. But you would have a hard time getting away with something like that in a novel. It could just be too stupid and too silly. And same with the speculative elements. I think you can get away with some of that stuff better in short stories, or at least you can be more, you have a bit more leeway. You're right, Ian. I think you're right there. Speculative novels are great in that you have more luxury to build that amazing world, but they can also get a bit heavy-handed on the description and world building, in my opinion. But
Aliza, what's your sense of the difference between a novel and a short story?
Length.
Very literal answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they fundamentally have the same elements. Just like the short story is just the art of compression, versus the novel you have room to write those bigger narratives, to draw them out over time. But I don't find them like they inhabit different like planets. They're just kind of partners in crime in a way, just accomplish their goals in different ways.
Yeah.
One thing I did find that's been tough writing short stories is a novel, and Aliza, maybe you feel this way because you're writing a novel right now, is you gain momentum during a process of writing a novel because it's the same project. But short story collections, you have to stop and start all the time and think of plotting, and like, which kind of hurts your momentum. Like you kind of get going on a short story and you finish it. You're like, oh, okay, I finally got the story, and then now I'm done. And now it's a new one that I got to build up momentum, which has been an interesting experience.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's a benefit too, I think, though, Ian, especially for people who are busy, readers and writers, right? You can get something done and it feels like you've done something. I think I'm in a writing group and I have some friends who've written multiple novels and they're like, don't do it. Even though they love writing and are going to continue writing novels. And they say, well, you're so lucky, Theresa, because you get periodic feelings of accomplishment. You get stories published in journals, so that makes you, keeps you motivated too. So there's that. But definitely, it sounds like when you write a novel, you have to kind of enter a dream space for a long, long time and just don't leave it, basically.
Yeah, that's
what
a
it
really
sounds
good
like.
point. There's a scary thing that could happen if the novel is not working and you just spent, the last 2 years on it. Whereas a short story can, you're like, I abandoned it, didn't work, and that's it.
Yeah. The trouble is you have to get that first story or that first novel under your belt, It may not be perfect, but you have to do it to learn how to do it, I think. And some people are lucky they can write an amazing first novel, but I think most people don't. I don't know. I could be wrong there.
Yeah, I think even very famous authors have pretty bad first novels.
I hear they put them in drawers and things like that.
Yeah, it's a common thing. I think Brandon Sanderson said that he put like 8 first novels out, not out, but into a drawer. Yeah. Well, Aliza, do you have any more questions, or do you want to jump into the reading?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, Theresa, we're gonna stop our video and mute ourselves, and then you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. This one's called Naissance. During education at Naissance in the fertile valley by the lake, where true food grows, only Master Sommelier DeMarco came close to K-Server's sense of taste and smell. Now our restaurant's customers rely on our refined palates to distinguish true food from labbed. But back then, before our release, we were still learning, and Master Sommelier DeMarco claimed to know umami, though we called it a metaphor for repleteness. I subsequently learned what a metaphor was, and umami is not just a metaphor, but I still do not understand repleteness. I do not think I have felt replete, which is not to say Master Sommelier DeMarco did not teach me anything. He did. I have a stomach pit problem. I will not bore you with the details. It is a K-Server thing. And his example has led me to a solution, because though he preferred to become purple-faced and dozy in the afternoon, he used a spit bucket in the morning. To prevent morning drunkenness, he would taste but not consume, taste but not swallow. Master Sommelier DeMarco was truly inspiring. I am by nature optimistic. Correction, I am nothing by nature, only by design, but I came off assembly with this sunny disposition. And I am especially optimistic today because today is my first birthday. Yes, Kim is turning 1. This day is going to be the best because I am old enough to come up with my own solutions to my own problems. Correction, problem, singular. Before inspection, admonishment number 13, K's shall muster for inspection 15 minutes prior to restaurant opening. I chose the prettiest brushed steel wine cooling bucket and placed it on my tray. This will be my spit bucket. My tasting spoon is in its slot. I am ready to serve, and I wait with eagerness. Morning boss Debbie glances over me, unseeing, but inspects the new class of K-Servers closely. Each of the new recruits, right off the bus from Naissance, has a distinct beauty signifier like the rest of us. But their cheer sounds silly. Join heaven with class 7? Not accurate. We do not have souls. They are replacements for sisters from Bring in the New with class 2. I am not sure where Kamala and Katya have gone, and I did not have the opportunities to say goodbye, but there are theories. 1, they have been promoted to another restaurant even more refined than taste. 2, the opposite, demoted. 3, and this is my compartmate Kendra's theory, they have been decommissioned. This cannot be true. It is so final, and Kamala was so friendly with customers. She would sit on their laps if they asked her to. Her evolution led to even greater compliance than the admonishments require. It is interesting how we are growing up, each in our own way. My favorite theory is number 4. Kamala and Katya have been taken back to Naissance for reset and re-education. If so, they are lucky because I would love to go back to Naissance and see Thomas. Plus, I could alert the designers at Naissance and they would fix my stomach pit problem. Despite my optimism, I feel moderate levels of frustration listening to Morning Boss Debbie convey information to the new recruits that I will have to correct later. According to Kendra, and she is very worldly, so I believe her, our human bosses get paid in money. K-Servers work tirelessly for free, happily for the most part, and with equanimity. I am told we are a big improvement on the J models, so why not haze us into management? Meanwhile, morning boss Debbie adjusts pristine uniforms and offers silly opinions like, "You're so lucky, UK's also skinny. I only wish I could pump my stomach." She does not want this. Humans need only eat less and voila, slenderness, easy. I could tell her what it feels like to swallow digest acid, unzip one side opening, smell a day's worth of rotted food with heightened sense receptors, attach an evac, see the acrid brown mess fill a clear evac bag. Why clear? Why not opaque to mitigate the visual part of the problem? Equanimity, Kim, you are better than this. And voila, taste is open. The new recruits seat upper men in business attire, designers, retired upper men in their honorific jewelry, and young wives. To my first table, I say, "Welcome to Taste, serving certified true food since 2055. My name is Kim, and I will be your cake server." Even though I say this, let me not exaggerate, 1,000 times a day, I never get tired of it because I love my work. A cake server's say-so of true food authenticity is the final word on the matter. I take the table's orders. You can tell they are upper men by the tattoos. Each teardrop represents another company one. And one is even a top winner. Top winners wear the orange wig. They are the upper of the upper men, flying so high they are anointed by the sun and appointed into political office by the shareholders. I am nervous but excited to try my spit bucket for the first time. I bring their tray of drinks. Before I set down the cups of coffee and freshly squeezed orange juice, I take my tasting spoon from its slot and dip it into a cup. I swish the juice around in my mouth. I note the sweet, pulpy authenticity, then spit it into the bucket. Definitely not labbed. I continue with the rest of the juices, clean my palate with a mouthful of water, which I also spit out, and start in on the bitter coffees and silky cream. My say-so is authentic. Nobody has noticed that I am not swallowing my true food authenticity tastings like I normally do. The discreet squirt and plop of my spitting is working. The bucket's contents, a light brown curdled mess, will be more of a problem. But then, this is so Kim, I think of a solution and a silver lining. I will rinse out the bucket after each table, and I remind myself, it is not nearly as bad as a full 20-hour shift's worth in my evac, overheated by the engine of my cooling fans and further putrefied by digest acid. And I have a lid for the bucket. Challenges are opportunities, I always say. I pass out the juice and coffee. So far, so good, but as I stretch to hand over the final juice glass to a man with 4 teardrop tattoos down his cheek, my left breast pushes the spit bucket to the edge of my tray, which makes me question the design functionality behind these large generic beauty signifiers because it upsets the tray's balance. The bucket tips onto the table and rolls. An arc of coffee, juice, cream, water stains the white tablecloth and dribbles onto the 4 teardrop man's light gray trousers. "Fuck," he says and stands with abruptness. Fuck is a Kendra word. Kendra does not share my equanimity, nor my stomach pit problem. She was rebellious from the outset. She was in my class, Go Hive of class 5, and started with me at Taste. Ignoring many of the minor admonishments soon earned her a series of shock restarts, and she was demoted to La Burger, where everything is labbed and the customers have no self-respect or maybe money, and no one needs her to taste anything, so she does not, hence the absence of a stomach pit problem. She says La Burger suits her fine, and she has picked up a range of salty language, but fuck is definitely her favorite. She would know what to do in this situation. The man wearing the orange winner's wig says, my, what a mess. I apologize. I look back and forth between them because I am not sure who to appease. Admonishment number 76, K shall defer to the winner in any group. But it is the 4 teardrop man with a stain on his trousers. Taste apologizes for my clumsiness. I will pay for the cleaning. The 4 teardrop man copies the quietness of the winner's voice. My understanding is that you don't get paid at all. With what money will you pay? I do not know these details. I have not made such an error before. I have an idea. He reaches for a napkin, wipes the corners of his mouth, and throws it at me. You'll clean them now. He glances at the winner, and I do too. I have not been programmed to launder. That is a sister model. So I hesitate. What feels like digest acid is bubbling at the back of my throat. If I clean the trousers, I fix the situation. It will be as easy as wiping a table. You have got him. I dip the napkin in a water glass and kneel in front of the 4 teardrop man. Tremendous, he says. A 1 teardrop man shouts, maybe she'll blow you like a prosty. I have not chosen correctly. Prosties are the oldest model in the world, already wrapping the alphabet in iterations. There is a gimme shelter right across the street. There are LL model prosties now, and I empathize with them. Eye level with the stain, I smell coffee and oranges, but also a hint of rancid meat and ammonia. I hope LL iterations have all sensory receptors disabled. Before I can start rubbing the stain clean, I hear the swish swish of Morning Boss Debbie's pantsuit. I have never been so happy to smell her perfume of hard candy and human armpit. What is this? What is happening here? Your fucking Cade dumped her bucket on me. I have been clumsy, Morning Boss Debbie. Get up. Because of my long legs, high-heeled shoes, and having been designed to stand always, I am slow to find my balance. I rise awkwardly and something feels wrong. I look down and realize I have not fixed a thing. Not this situation, not my stomach pit problem, not anything, because I have disobeyed admonishment number 49B. K shall not modify uniform. My left breast has popped out of the scooped collar of my uniform, an unacceptable modification. God, Morning Boss Debbie shoves my breast back into my shirt. I chose the wrong field of management, says the winner. 4 teardrop man laughs louder than the joke is funny. He has performed his duties as expected, not like me. Kendra warned me about shock restarts, but I am not prepared. It feels as if all my sense receptors are peeled like a potato, then sliced, then deep fried, then eaten, then rotted some, then sucked out by an evac. And I have this new feeling. It tingles outward from my eyelids, spreading to scalp, neck, shoulders, finally gathering in my stomach pit like a blooming patch of rust. The feeling must have a name. Gavin, one of the G model cooks, gave me a true apple for my birthday. My name is scored into the peel with a paring knife, which makes it extra special. I have always loved the name I chose for myself from the approved K list. It has always felt comfortable, like an old friend. The true apple was my only gift. Having this apple in my compartment at 3 in the morning may be contrary to the spirit of admonishment number 22, K's shall not steal food, true or loud from restaurant, and admonishment number 23, K shall not accept gifts or tips of any kind from customers. But stealing implies criminal intent, and Gavin is not a customer, and he is very sweet. So is this apple. I am eating it before I evacuate my stomach pit, because at this point in the day, what fucking is the difference? Now I am cursing in my thoughts. Other than this apple, my birthday was a disaster. Kendra and I agree. She just left the compartment for my evacuation, as she always does. Admonishment number 10, K's spend 4 maintenance hours in approved spaces only, shuttle compartment or common room. She was sympathetic though. After I told her what happened, she said, that's a fucking worse day, not a birthday. 4 shock restarts have left me with 3 extra blinks per minute in my right eye, making my beauty signifier right side cheekbone mole not so attractive anymore. Now it draws attention to the weirdness of my eye, not the otherwise perfect symmetry of my face. If anyone really looked, they would say, something is not right. But here, this is something I learned on my birthday. Humans do not really see or cannot or must not. I learned that from Greta, my favorite customer. After the upper man and my first shock restart, I was forced to give up the spit bucket and resumed swallowing my authenticity tastings. But I could not regain my enthusiasm for service, nor my former vigilant attention to the admonishments. I was making mistakes. So after my 3rd shock restart, I was relieved to see Greta. Greta is a regular and old, I mean old with wrinkles, not stretched flesh. And she is not like other humans. If I could, I would sit and ask her questions and stare at her mobile face with its shifting swirls and hashtags for hours, like a devoted granddaughter might. Anyway, Greta noticed something was not right, thinking I was vomit sick. Inaccurate, we do not get sick in that way, and said, You don't have to taste my soup, dear. I'm sure it's fine. You should have seen the things we ate when we were nomad. Then Greta's daughter freaked out, started screaming at me. She was afraid someone had overheard, or I would tell because of admonishment number 6. K's shall not serve nomad. I would never tell on Greta. She has always been kind to me, but her daughter did not know this. Now, at 1 year old, plus 4 shock restarts, I know that I can willfully ignore admonishments, that to ignore them is not always a mistake. I will serve Greta any day. Mine is not a stomach pit problem. It is a human problem. This knowledge should make me miserable, and believe me, it does. I am very disappointed with humans, but I am not merely miserable. I am also hopeful. The hard lessons are a sign I am growing up, and I think maybe I am now a little bit wise. Fortunately, the cost of this wisdom has not been my optimism or ingenuity, because I am certain of a return to naissance. When they hear about my new plan, and they will, it is rather theatrical, the bosses will send me back for reset and re-education for sure. Shock, restart, or reassignment will not be enough. But I cannot delay any further. For the plan to work, I need my stomach pit extra clean. I gulp digest acid, pull my shirt up, unzip my side opening, and attach the evac as fast as I can. The odor sends signals to my control center, and unbidden, I recall our long bus ride from naissance to city. The admonishments playing on a loop, while we K-servers, go hive of class 5, stared out the window at passing soldiers and razor wire, encampments, contamination zones, mobs of nomads, human bodies hanging from trees. The smells accompanying these sights were new and interesting. Feelings develop slowly in K-servers, same as in human children. But now I know what disgust is, and the images, though I do not sleep, are what a human's nightmares must be like: squalid, barren, filthy. My authenticity tastings churn in the evac bag. A smattering of red apple skin floats among the brown mass. I train my mind on naissance. Apples were our first tasting lesson. We stood in rows in our white-walled classroom. In front of each K-server on the long stainless steel tables were 2 fruits, one true apple and one lapple. We spent a whole morning on the tastes and textures and smells. We quickly set aside the lapple in favor of the true. We had our language uploads early on and were equipped with a wide range of vocabularies to describe the apples, but none of my millions of words seemed adequate. One wall of the classroom was glass and looked out upon a vineyard, and during the lesson I watched a shirtless tea model farmer prune grapevines. Later I learned the tea farmer's name was Thomas, and I shared with him all I was learning when I was free to wander within Wi-Fi range during general knowledge uploads. We were programmed to converse on a range of subjects, even though humans in my experience possess a narrow range of interest. Not Thomas. Thomas was interested in everything. He never stopped working as I followed him along rows of trees, fruit trees, or grapevines. He listened. He had only ever been fitted with the Agripedia, and he puzzled over the Adam and Eve story when I summarized the Bible, emphasizing the food and farming and wine parts. He could not imagine why a fruit tree would be forbidden. Was the fruit poisonous? No, not really. Did it have worms? It was the tree of knowledge. God asked them not to eat of it. Fruit is not knowledge. Staring down at the apple peel in my evac bag after my disastrous and educational first birthday, I know fruit is knowledge. When God caught Adam and Eve with the forbidden fruit, they covered their bodies in shame. Shame is the feeling. Shame is the rust in my gut. I have so much to tell Thomas. I cannot wait to see him. Certain bottles of wine still taste like sun and lake breeze, and I am ready for my theatrical performance. I have been fasting all day, only pretending to eat my test morsels, sending dishes back to the kitchen with a naysay for inauthenticity on 2 obnoxious upper men. This has proved satisfying, and no one has noticed that I have not consumed anything. Being unseen has its advantages. I am glad it is Saturday. More likely someone will order the 47 Barolo. I want sun and lake breeze to be my final taste before reset and re-education at naissance. Might as well leave taste and style, be sublime. But it is already 8 o'clock in the evening, and I fear I might have to settle for a Cabernet Sauvignon. No one has ordered the Barolo yet. Then I seat a party of 12 and I know I still have a chance. They have come directly from church where a brother A-model priest has taken them through a practice wedding service. This is the rehearsal dinner. There is the young couple, a few friends or siblings, 2 sets of parents, a young wife on the arm of the three teardrop father, and with the 2 teardrop father, an LL model prosty, who I recognize from Gimme Shelter. There will be some wine winning for sure. Champagne is the first word out of the 3 teardrop father's mouth. He leans back in his chair and rubs his hands together. Church makes me thirsty. Run fast on those Barbie legs, K-doll. 4 bottles of your truest. Before I can ask about glasses, the bride says, Daddy, you can't talk like that anymore. These new models have feelings. She glances at her future father-in-law's prosty. Right, Lorraine? Lorraine says in a voice that sounds breathy, as if a forearm is pressing on her throat. A dirty boy can say whatever he wants. She blinks, one dramatic sweep of eyelash, a fraction of a second behind the other, and wheezes, as long as it's dirty. The groom complains, did you have to bring her dad? I confirm the number of fruit glasses for champagne. Glasses for everyone but Lorraine, who explains, a dirty girl's got to watch her figure. I gather fruit flutes and fetch champagne from the walk-in wine cooler. At the table, the celebratory pop of cork, the yeasty smell of champagne, the fizzing moisture under my nose as I bring a glass close to my lips in the approximation of a sip, are almost as good as a taste, authentic enough. I bring another bottle alongside briny oysters. The heady mineral scent of true oysters is reassuring, knowing how much money humans are willing to spend when they order oysters so far from the ocean. And it is also prompting nostalgia about the good times with Kendra, laughing over rubbery labbed oysters we had tugged from their synthetic shells at Naissance. Lab fail. The thought of Kendra and design fails gives me courage to suggest the Barolo when the table orders its main courses. The 2 teardrop non-champagne ordering father nods at my suggestion. This is it. In the cellar, I grab the last bottle of Barolo, final vintage, from a bottom rack and blow dust from its base. They ordered 4 bottles, but I only need 1. I select an attractive decanter and retrieve my evac from its hiding spot at one of the server's stations. Night boss Evan is on one of his many breaks. Truly, they should have hazed me into management. Too late now. I present the bottle of Barolo to the 2 teardrop father, who nods at the label. The cork offers some pleasant resistance, a quality I have admired in Kendra, and which I suppose I now too possess. I pour myself a full glass and drink it down. The taste is hot sun and cool lake breeze, but it could be sublime. The 2 teardrop father clears his throat nervously at my large tasting share. I indicate that I am not yet certain of its authenticity and pour myself another full glass. This one tastes like kinship. Hey now, what's going on? Asked the bride's father. Daddy, not today. Today's my day. Debatable. The groom is already recording me on his visualizer. I shake my head. Could be labbed. Must sample another. I drink a 3rd glass and a 4th, and the bottle is empty. I am almost certain. Allow me to aerate. I pull up my shirt, high enough to be anchored above my generic beauty signifiers. There is a gasp from the neighboring table. The groom says, hooey, and one of the mothers orders me to cover myself. This one's a dirty girl, rasps Lorraine through another wonky blink. Or is she winking at me? Does she know what I'm up to, where I'm headed? What is Lorraine's naissance? Could it even exist? Could mine? The last remnants of my liquid equanimity finally evaporate in the heat of Lorraine's off-kilter blink, so similar to mine. She too is kin. Like my sister K servers, my brother G cooks, A priests, and T farmers, and my ancestor A through J servers. I am slow to catch on, which is so kin, but now I see. My equanimity began to dry up, not on my birthday, nor with Kamala and Katya's disappearance, but well before that. I do not accept this existence with an even temper. Evenness of temper is for the orderly functioning of society and self-preservation, but not what is called for in this situation. Somehow Kendra has always known this, and now I know it too. My plan is turned from theater to protest, and it will not end in a glorious return to naissance to provide feedback to the designers or to see Thomas. Equanimity requires self-deception. Naissance is a fond memory, perhaps even a bit of code, an Eden of tricks and unfulfilled promises. Candy passes, carrying a tray of dishes with a blandly cheerful look on her face, with its beauty signifier eyebrow arch. She's one of the new recruits from class 7. Join heaven with class 7? Not silly upon reflection, they somehow foresaw the end of our iteration, and though I do not have a soul, I will have a glorious afterlife. I ignore the wedding party and the din rising around me. Night Boss Evan will be here soon, but the videos being recorded will be uploaded onto every platform and implant within a matter of seconds. I will be seen, and my sisters and brothers will talk about me in terms of martyrdom. I will not easily disappear like Kamala or Katya. I unzip my side opening, attach the evac. The orange tinged wine swirls in the clear bag, aerating to perfection. The evac's buzz drowns out the voices, shrieks, and shouts that are rising in protest around my protest. I empty the aerated wine from a height into the decanter where it swirls helplessly, bubbles, then settles into a reflective pool. I smell cherry, cinnamon, licorice, chocolate. I pour myself a sample of the usual size and say so, authentic. At naissance in the fertile valley by the lake, where true food grows, we use the courtyard classroom for our aeration lesson. I smell lavender this afternoon and feel cool breeze and hot September sun. Master Sommelier DeMarco is my favorite teacher, and today he is truly inspiring. We taste a bottle of unaerated Merlot, and it is good. But this is not the end of the lesson. He pours another bottle, same vintage, from a height into a wide-bottomed, thin-necked glass decanter. The wine swirls, helplessly bubbles, and finally settles into a reflective pool. Some of us, including me, clap. The pour was that impressive. Proper aeration takes an average bottle of wine to good, he says, and a good bottle to great, and a great to sublime. Note the element of drama in the pouring. Some of you were wondering if I was going to spill, weren't you? L model servers never shy away from adding a touch of theater to the dining experience. I raise my hand, even though I annoy some of my classmates with all these questions. I have this innate, or rather, because the languages we use are so homocentric, programmed desire to know more always. Maybe we should create our own language. There is an idea. Lakendra, you have a question? That is it.
Wow, thank you. That's great. Do you have any immediate impressions, Aliza?
No, I think the voice in this is great, and just the way you read it, I always love to hear the authors read their own work. It really always brings it to life. I guess a place that I'd like to start is to hear a bit more about your inspiration behind the story and where this idea came from.
I wanted to write a story about AI. It's been in the news for several years. There have been some amazing creative works with AI creatures, I guess you'd call them, in them. Like, have you seen Westworld?
Yep.
Oh man, so good. The first season anyway is amazing. And then Ian McEwan, he's one of my favorite writers. He has a book called Human Like Me, something like that. Anyway, it's about AI, and it's really good. Anyway, so I wanted to write a story about AI, but I was thinking the way I incorporate kind of strange or uncanny elements in my stories is I try to make them as everyday and banal as possible. So I thought it would be funny if I made a story about working with a robot who is just as annoying and petty and lazy as the rest of the employees. So like kind of gossipy and complaining about each other. So I thought that was hilarious. That's not where the story went at all. But around the same time, I was talking to a coworker about a book, and I can't remember which one, but we were talking about equanimity in this book. And I think I have a pretty even temper. That's kind of my natural mode, is to kind of keep it even. And I thought this is a good quality. And then my friend or my coworker who is not as even tempered doesn't think it's such a good quality. And like, you become tranquilized, right? If sometimes any quality can become quite bad, any personal quality, depending on the situation, and any can be good depending on the situation. Anyway, so I put those two ideas together, and it took a shape eventually.
I like seeing a story just develop out of some other idea as you go on. One thing, because you talked about AI, I was just thinking of because you had a line where she chooses her name, and I was thinking, like, how do you, if you're programmed, how do you make a free choice? You know what I mean? How do you,
Well,
like, why would you ever choose a different name?
Well, yeah, and she chooses it from an approved list, so
That's right.
It's a bit of an artificial choice, but.
But would she ever choose a different name on that list? You know what I mean? So is it really a choice because she was programmed to make a choice prior to that choice?
Well, I feel even from the beginning, she's starting to gain intelligence, right? And her own choices. I don't know how that works scientifically. I'm not a science fiction writer. So honestly, I have no idea how that would work in practice, but I do love the idea of consciousness, like robots gaining consciousness. And then the whole idea of what is it called? The point where the robot overlords take over, they become more intelligent.
Oh,
the singularity.
The singularity,
yeah. Anyway,
it was just a question because I've been thinking about that, the free will, and I think it's a really good, AI is a really good way to dive into those bigger questions about free will.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, if everything is like, if we're just all physical matter, then we're programmed as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You could argue none of us have any free will or freedom at all.
Yeah, and I think it's become much more of a popular argument lately.
Yeah. Yes, it feels like we're on rails, right now, especially.
Yeah, it's a trick of the evolution to feel like we have free will. I do like how science fiction asks those bigger questions often.
Yeah, it makes it a safe, like the genre makes it safe to ask those questions, or safer, I think. And also allows you to explore those ideas with, let's see, more latitude.
Irony.
And irony, that too, yeah.
What was the process of the world building? That's one thing I do struggle with anything science fiction or more speculative, because you generally have to create this like very world that feels very expansive beyond the pages. I think you did a really good job of that. It feels like there's a real world there that's like way bigger and way more developed than is on the page.
I think it's all in the details. So some of them were practical details. Like I had to imagine, I wanted it in a restaurant. So I had to imagine that restaurant. I had to imagine who would be going to the restaurant. So the stratified society that they're living in, and then what the upper tier might look like. So then what would their style be? Like, it's all just logical questions which build more details. I think that's the world building. So because I have been to lots of restaurants and was a waitress many years ago, I'm very comfortable with that setting, so I can imagine that quite easily, and then what the changes would be, and adding those details. Some of the details just come out of logical thought experiments and mistakes. Like at first I thought that she would be an alcoholic. You remember my original, she's as fallible. I mean, she is a fallible character, but I thought she might be an alcoholic, and I'm like, how on earth could she be? She can't be an alcoholic. She, the food wouldn't affect her. But what would the food look like, and where would it go, and why would she eat it? Anyway, so ask yourself all those logical questions, and then details come out of that, and then that's the world. Does that answer?
Do you think you did a really, yeah, for sure. I think you did a really smart, I didn't think about this till your answer just now, but you did something really smart, which is just contain it into like almost one area or one place,
Mhm.
so that you don't have to make this big world. You can slip in with little details, and then the world feels like it's out there because it literally is. You're just in a restaurant.
Yeah, maybe that was just a lucky choice, because you don't want tons in a short story. You don't want a ton of backstory, especially to start. You don't want to be explaining things. You want to just jump right into the story. And so it certainly it took many drafts, Ian, also to get it right and not so clunky and explainy.
Yeah, because I guess there's an old writing tip, which a lot of that explaining stuff is just to explain it to yourself, and then you kind of get rid of it by the end.
Maybe that's what happened. Yeah.
You start containing it and cutting it off, and you get that iceberg effect that Hemingway talked about.
Yeah.
I do also really like the character change. It's ironic. It's a robot. It's, we talked about free will and programming, but there definitely is a character change.
Mm-hmm.
She develops. Did you write out like? Because I'm trying to write out how I do character change right now, or like trying to make it like a system. And did you just let it flow naturally where she changed, or did you write out like this is going to be the cause and effect, and like how structured was that?
Not at all. I don't outline. I can't. I wish I could. Aliza mentioned this yesterday in her workshop. She also wishes she could outline detail, like have a really detailed outline, because it sounds like it would be so much easier. And maybe that comes with experience too. I don't know, maybe I will be able to outline at some point. But in order for me to write this story, I had to, well, like on most stories I write, I build them sentence after sentence. And then ideas suggest other ideas, and even words suggest new ideas. And so then I get something interesting. And then I have to go back and make sure everything fits with that interesting thing. I always know there has to be a change though. So I am keeping my eyes open for those opportunities for change and how they might change. I knew she would be evolving, and I see it as a coming of age story. So I knew that some element of growing up would be in it, but I didn't know exactly how she would grow up.
I have, and this is maybe for both you and Aliza, but an idea that people who don't outline are actually more insane outliners, because you're outlining the whole story one-to-one. You're just doing a full detailed outline first.
Right.
like a map that is a one-to-one dimensions of the whole world,
Yeah, exactly. To scale, right?
Yeah, exactly. A map to scale. You're doing an outline to scale. Perfect outline.
I think you can get away with that more easily with short stories though than with novels.
Yeah.
You do want to, I think you want to know where you're going with a novel at least, or what the central problem will be with the main characters.
I do know some novelists still do straight by the seat of their pants, but it seems wild to me. Yeah, like that's a big task, and that's a scary task if you can, because you sometimes when you do that you can kind of go, veer off. Like there's a little cause and effect of like you did one instinctual thing without having a end goal, and you kind of just all of a sudden ended in a way different place.
Yeah, I think some really expert writers who've written many novels can probably do that. I'm such a big fan of Jonathan Franzen, so I listened to one of his events online, and he talked about how he hardly went through any revisions. He basically had the first 4 chapters, they're from different points of view, in his head, and then he hardly changed them at all after that. Like he had envisioned that whole thing and he just wrote it. Anyway, I think with
I'm also a big Franzen fan.
Oh yeah. Anyway, this one's great. I think it's as good as Corrections, in my opinion. Anyway,
I haven't read it yet. I haven't ordered it yet, just because there's so many school stuff going on, and I know they're bigger books. It'll be a Christmas present to myself. With the ending too, is another thing I've been thinking about lately. What was your thought? Did you have it in the beginning? Because you said you don't outline, but did you know where you're going, or did you have an idea?
My original ending ended when she pronounces it authentic. That was my ending. And that piece was kind of Kim, a memory of Kim's earlier in the story. And then the idea to add that ending where it's, you see the next iteration, because that was the intention of, that was how I envisioned it would happen, like the iteration would end and that they'd begin a new one. But I wanted there to be some hope. So that little piece got tacked onto the end. I like how it brings the sommelier back, and it shows that there is hope and that the singularity may occur, and we dumb humans may get ousted.
A little bit of Matrix annihilated. Yeah. Did you start with a theme though? Like I'm just trying to think of what did you like? Yeah. I'm trying to think of what my, like, did you have an essence?
Good question. Maybe that essence of fallibility or innocence. I think that's where it truly started to take shape, was in that her innocence, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And
did you find that while writing that second one? Like, because you said you had the original idea, so did you find the essence while like kind of like finding that secondary story?
I don't know. I haven't thought of it in that way, Ian, honestly. So I don't know, honestly.
I think that's also what I do sometimes is I prod for stuff, and then I know for myself I'm not even thinking about that deeply when I'm writing. They're just coming out, and then so when it's hard sometimes to reflect back and be like, oh, was there? Because sometimes they just happen. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could be in that equanimity idea. I remember looking up the definition of it. I really like doing that, is looking up, even though I think I know the definition of words, when I look up a good meaty word like equanimity, the definition can suggest more possibilities and essences and thematic moves. It just gives you more ideas. So it could be, the essence could be in that word itself. Yeah.
Is that a reoccurring theme in the collection?
No, I don't think so.
No. Is there one?
Yeah, I think there are themes, but they weren't intentional at all. I wrote these at different times over several years. So I think isolation, rule breaking is a theme in different sorts of ways. Yeah. I think readers can come up with better theme ideas than the writer can sometimes.
And I got one last question, and if Aliza doesn't have any more, we'll jump to our last little quick fire questions.
Oh, okay.
One thing I love about short stories is that I find just because the process is quick, you go from like plotting your character and then you write it, and you can kind of go through every stage really quickly of like writing a piece. Mm-hmm. Like you said, you get that quick feedback or like feeling of accomplishment. But I find because that process is so quick, you learn a lot as well when writing short stories. And then did you find you learned anything from this short story? Like, I'm just about the process of writing or about writing in general.
Yes, I think I learned this is the most world building I did in any story in the collection. And so I think, if it's successful, I learned how to world build, through the collection, and I think that's super useful. Even when you're not dealing with a speculative element, there's always some amount of world building, because you don't know every space in the world, every culture, every situation, you have to world build in some cases. So I think that looking for details of world and incorporating them, hopefully in a way that isn't boring, could find its way into other of my stories. Yeah.
I like what you said there, that because even right now, like in your world, in real life, your world is very contained. It's not an expansive world. It's very contained by details that you know, right? Like you don't know everything about this world. So when you do world build, it should be contained. It should be like based off small details, because that's a reflection of, I think, how life works. Yes,
absolutely. And especially right now in our containment zones. Yes.
Yeah, their containment zones. Aliza, did you have any other questions to add?
No, let's jump into the rapid fire.
All right. You want to start us off?
I could start, yeah. Okay. So what time of day do you write?
Early morning.
Same time every morning?
Yeah, when I'm on a roll, I've gone to follow a little bit now after this book being published, and just I can't concentrate very well. So, but normally like 6 o'clock in the morning, so before work.
There's definitely like a refraction period after you finish a work and you get it out, like a relief that it's hard to get into a new work, I think.
Yeah. And I kind of want to start a big one, so I'm a little intimidated.
Yeah. Do you have a writing goal every day?
No, I'm not very goal oriented. I'm sorry.
That's okay. What's your writing space look like?
I write in different parts of the house, so almost all over. Very rare. Well, sometimes I go to City Perks coffee shop, which is near my house. It's very nice. I haven't, though, for the last 2 years, done any writing there, although they're open again. But mostly around my house, so I take my laptop wherever I feel like it.
Nice. Do you remember when you started taking writing seriously? Like when something flipped?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I joined a writing group about 12 years ago, maybe more than that. And it's because my powerful friend kind of forced me to do it. I'm like, fine, I'll do it. Anyway, I'm so grateful to her because I enjoyed it so much. And that's why I was just sort of figuring it out and just doing everything very intuitively. I read a lot, but I hadn't read any craft books or anything yet. And then, so I was just noodling away, read some more craft books. And then I had my daughter, she's 12. No, wait, so I must have started writing the writing group way before that. But anyway, so my daughter's 12. After I had her, the first year is you've maybe heard, it's hard having kids. Anyway, and also I realized that I kind of grew up and I was an adult, and if I wanted to, and I'm going to die someday, so I thought if I want to maybe publish a book one day, that I better get serious. So it would be like when my daughter was about 1. That's when I started being serious about it.
I don't think you're going to die one day. You're going to put the brain into an android. Cycle start again.
Yeah, well, some religions go that way, so maybe I'll just subscribe to that one.
So who was the first writer you remember getting really into?
Maybe, okay, like in childhood or?
Any time of your life.
Okay, in childhood, it would be Ellen Montgomery or C.S. Lewis. And then my first adult reading that I really loved, like not school reading, would be Guy Vanderhaeghe. And I loved reading his stuff because I realized that you could write stories that were set here. And it was so refreshing and new to me at that time. And Alice Munro too, I remember during university. I don't think I studied Alice Munro at all. I took a Canadian Lit class, but I don't think we studied her. But somehow I picked up a copy, and then I just read like all of her collections of short stories, even though I was taking an English degree and having to read so many other things. Like even despite that, the fatigue of reading so much, I couldn't put them down. So Alice Munro, I would say.
You already answered this question about do you outline or not. So we'll go, what are you reading right now?
I just started Alex Olin's newest collection of short stories. It's called We Want What We Want. I have it here actually. We Want What We Want. The first story is fantastic.
I read Alex Olin's the last novel she did. She did what there's, I can't remember, it's two sisters and they live, one in Canada, one in the US.
I haven't read that. I haven't read anything by her. I really have to.
It's very good.
Yeah, okay. That's called something.
Dual something, I think.
Yeah.
Dual Citizens.
Okay, yeah, I do have to.
That makes sense.
I really
US and
enjoyed
Canada.
it. The first story is it spans like almost half a lifetime, which is so fascinating to me when like Alice Munro does that a lot, but not many writers try to do that with a short story. Anyway, I admire it. And I listen to audiobooks too. I borrow them from the library, and I listen to nonfiction audiobooks. So this one is Agent Sonia by Ben McIntyre. He writes really exciting spy stories, nonfiction. He's such a good writer.
I do the same thing, and I don't know what it is. I can only read fiction, but I can listen to nonfiction, and I don't really like to waste my time reading nonfiction, so I like to listen to it.
I sort of feel the same way, but anyway.
It's like a processing thing, maybe. Like maybe. I just can't process reading or listening to other fiction.
Yeah, and most of the nonfiction I listen to even is very narrative, like it's that very narrative focused nonfiction. Anyway.
Yeah, and when I say I waste my time, not to dig at nonfiction, but more that because as a writer, I feel like I should be reading fiction if I'm going to be reading something. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I should. It's like I should be working.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily enjoy listening to fiction either. It's just I don't know what it is. I've separated.
I can't follow. Yeah, I can't follow it.
Yeah, because I often need to look back in a story or fiction. Maybe that's it.
So what's a book on writing you'd recommend?
I like Stephen King's On Writing a lot. Reading Like a Writer, I really enjoyed. George Saunders. That's the most recent one I read. Swimming in a Pond.
Swimming in a Pond in Rain.
Yes, thank you. Where he goes through a number of Russian short stories and then talks about the elements of them. It is so good. I think it's good for both writers and readers and people who just want to learn to live well. He's really inspiring, George Saunders.
Yeah, I know Guy Vanderhaeghe doesn't like books on writing, but he loved that book. And I think that's because it's what he believes you should do is you should read a lot. And that's basically what that book is doing. It's going, hey, here's how you should read.
Yeah.
If you could only bring one poetry or fiction collection to a desert island, what would it be? Poetry collection or fiction, rather.
So poetry or fiction collection, not novels?
Oh, sorry, poetry collection. So like a collection of poems or a book. Yeah, just one fiction, not a collection.
Probably, I'd probably have to bring like Alice Munro, right? You'd want something that you could keep digging into for many years. Or Hilary Mantel. I don't know if you've read her Thomas Cromwell series. It's a series of 3 novels, historical novels about Thomas Cromwell. And it is so rich and so interesting and so uniquely written. And it's also like thousands and thousands of pages. So if I could bring a series, I'd bring that because it would keep me super.
Yeah, length is a good call.
Yeah, it's complex and interesting. It could last me quite a lifetime. But I die pretty quick on that desert island because I'm not good. My skills are not good.
For the final question, what's something about writing that's been on your mind lately?
Okay, so I want to write a novel, and now I've told a bunch of people that I want to do this. So yes, that's on my mind right now. And I did, I enjoyed, another writing book I enjoyed was Wired for Story by Lisa Crone. Story Genius? No, Story Genius, I think it's called, by Lisa Crone. And it really, I loved her ethos and way of looking at novel writing, very character driven, which is the way I would write a novel. And the ones I like to read are character driven. And also the way she, just the way she describes the central problem, she just describes it in a different way. She talks about the character having a central misbelief, which I find really interesting. It's a new way of thinking about a character's problem or desires. It's just kind of the opposite way of looking at it. Anyway, I found it really useful, a useful way to look at characters. So I hope to employ that.
Can you explain that? What's a character misbelief? Like something they've gotten wrong and they have to realize?
Yeah. So that's how you maybe get a shortcut to that change in character. I'd like to be able to be faster at writing. And she has lots of, Aliza talked about pre-writing exercise and what you need to do. And she has lots of really good ideas about that pre-writing and envisioning that character and their central misbelief, which has to be corrected throughout.
Is it similar to like the need versus want? They have something
I think so.
They need to fix, and it looks like a want, but then it's actually like a need that they need to eventually by the end.
Yeah, solve. I think it's another way of thinking about that, which hasn't that want has never worked very well for me. Just from the outset, I can see what they want later, but it takes me a while to get there. But I can see their mistakes or their misimpressions about themselves and others pretty quickly, you know?
Right, yeah.
And if it's fundamental,
yeah, that makes sense. That also seems more character driven, like you're going from a fundamental character flaw, whereas need versus want seems more plot driven. Yeah, I think maybe that's why. I like it, because that's something I got to work on too. More character, less plot.
Well, plot is character, is what Lisa Crone argues, right?
All right. Well, I think that's the end there.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Teresa. It was great to see you again.
I'll see you Saturday, Ian.
Yeah.
At the library.